Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I never thought a summer barbecue could change everything. But that Saturday, it rewired something inside me. My name is Ethan, and I've been married to Claire for 10 years. Our life was routine, comfortable, predictable. Not exactly thrilling, but I thought we were happy. At least I thought I was. Started off like any other weekend. The sun was high. The scent of sizzling burgers filled the air. And our neighbors were scattered across our backyard, laughing and clinking glasses. I was flipping the steaks while Claire mingled near the picnic table. She looked distant. Not annoyed. Not angry. Just somewhere else entirely. Then she dropped it almost casually, like it was the most mundane detail in the world. Go on the honeymoon by yourself, she said, eyes scanning the horizon as if the statement were already irrelevant. For a moment I froze. A plate of burgers hovered mid-flip. The words didn't even register at first. Excuse me? I asked, trying to make sense of the casual cruelty. Go, she repeated, sipping her lemonade. You've always wanted to go. Why not just do it? It wasn't a joke. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't testing me. She meant it. My stomach sank. The heat of the grill couldn't compete with the sudden burn of disbelief. Why would she want me to go on our honeymoon alone? Had she checked out entirely? I looked around, half expecting someone to call her out, but our neighbors were too caught up in their own conversations. That's when I noticed Poppy, our single neighbor from across the street. She was leaning against the fence, a small smile playing on her lips, holding a sparkling soda can. Poppy was unique, small, energetic, with hair the color of autumn leaves, and eyes that always seemed to hold a secret she might share if the timing was right. She caught my gaze and didn't look away. Instead, she raised a brow, a subtle, knowing gesture that made my heart skip. I felt the tension in my shoulders melt slightly. She wasn't judging. She wasn't laughing. She was curious. Everything okay? She asked softly as I set the spatula down. I shrugged, unsure if I even knew. Yeah, fine, I muttered, forcing a smile I didn't feel. But my mind was spinning. Claire's words echoed in my ears. Alone. Honeymoon. What did that even mean? Was she done with me? Had she just given up? The idea of spending what was supposed to be a joyful, once-in-a-lifetime trip alone was unbearable. And yet, part of me felt free. I wandered toward the fence, drawn to Poppy's effortless energy. You ever get the feeling someone just gives up on you? I asked, more to hear myself talk than expecting an answer. Poppy tilted her head, her smile widening just slightly. All the time, she admitted. But sometimes it's not about them giving up. Maybe it's about us realizing we deserve better. Her words hit harder than I expected. I laughed softly, a little bitter, a little relieved. Better, huh? Yes, she said. Better than someone who doesn't notice when you're right there, standing in front of them. It was like she'd read my thoughts. Claire had been drifting away for months. Quiet, distant, polite but indifferent. And yet, I had convinced myself it was my fault somehow. That if I tried harder, smiled wider, made dinner sooner, maybe she'd come back. Now, hearing it from Poppy, it all felt clear. I watched as Claire laughed at something across the yard, and the distance between us suddenly felt impossible to cross. And then Poppy laughed too, a short, melodic sound that made the space around her feel warmer. The contrast was stark. One woman indifferent, the other fully alive. I realized in that moment that my honeymoon invitation, so coldly delivered by Claire, might have been the push I didn't know I needed. Maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to go through life pretending someone else cared. Maybe I could seek something that truly made me feel alive again. We lingered there, near the fence, talking quietly about the mundane things. Neighbors' strange lawn decorations, the unbearable heat, the new coffee shop downtown. And as I laughed genuinely, something I hadn't done in months, I noticed the tension in my chest begin to ease. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. And then came the moment I didn't see coming. Poppy reached into her bag and pulled out a small, playful envelope. "I don't know if this is forward," she said, "but maybe I could come with you? Not exactly your honeymoon, but an adventure, someone to share it with." My heart skipped again. The idea was reckless, impulsive, and yet completely intoxicating. Claire had handed me permission, whether intentionally or not, to step into something entirely new. And here was Poppy, bright and curious, offering a hand without judgment, without expectation, just possibility. The yard around us buzzed with laughter and conversation, but in that moment, the world felt quieter. The heat from the grill, the smell of charred meat, even Claire's distant smile became background noise. All that mattered was the choice laid before me. Follow the path I thought I was on, alone and heavy with disappointment, or step forward with someone who made me feel noticed. And I knew deep down which choice I wanted to make. I took a deep breath, letting the hum of the barbecue fade into the background. For months, I had been living in a haze of routine, ignoring the subtle cracks in my marriage, convincing myself that small gestures would patch something that was long gone. Claire's words had been blunt, cold, and almost cruel, but strangely, they felt like liberation. "Are you serious?" I asked Poppy, half laughing, half in disbelief. She smiled, that mischievous glint still in her eyes. "Completely. Life's too short to spend it alone if you don't have to." I hesitated. Part of me felt guilty thinking about 10 years with Claire, but then I realized how much of that guilt was misplaced. I had given everything I had, tried to nurture a connection that was slipping through my fingers despite my efforts. And now, I had a chance to embrace something vibrant, something alive. We started planning quietly, making tentative suggestions. A small cabin near the lake, just a weekend to escape the city and reset. Poppy's enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself laughing more in those few minutes than I had all year. For the first time in months, I felt like a man stepping into the unknown, but in a good way, like I was finally awake. Claire, oblivious to our plan, continued chatting with the neighbors, occasionally glancing over with a polite, almost indifferent smile. It hit me again. I had been living in a relationship where my presence had become background noise. And now, standing on the fence line, talking to someone who actually saw me, I felt seen. The next morning, we left early, just as the sun began to climb over the rooftops. The city streets were quiet, the world still waking up, and the hum of the tires on the asphalt felt like the heartbeat of freedom. Poppy had packed snacks, a playlist of old songs, and a notebook filled with doodles and ideas she wanted to share. It was whimsical, unexpected, and exactly the kind of escape I needed. When we reached the cabin, surrounded by trees and the shimmering lake, I felt my chest open in a way it hadn't in years. The water reflected the sky like a mirror. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, and the silence wasn't empty. It was full of possibility. Poppy unpacked her things, humming softly, and I realized that this moment was entirely mine to savor. That night, we built a fire outside, the flames flickering against the dark sky. Poppy shared stories of her childhood, her failed attempts at dating, and the little victories that had shaped her. I listened, completely engrossed, and then I shared my own. Tales of work, of quiet disappointments, of the marriage that had left me hollowed out. I never imagined I'd feel this, alive, I admitted, staring into the fire. I thought freedom would feel empty, lonely, but with you here it feels possible. Poppy smiled, leaning back, letting the firelight dance across her features. It should feel possible, Ethan. You deserve that. There was no rush, no pressure, no weight of expectations. Just two people laughing, talking, and simply existing in a way that reminded me how much life could hold when you stopped trying to fit it into someone else's framework. By the time the weekend ended, I realized I wasn't just returning from a trip. I was returning to myself. Claire would still be waiting back at home, in her carefully constructed bubble of indifference, but I no longer feared it. I had stepped outside, chosen joy over obligation, curiosity over resentment, and I had done it without guilt, without apology, fully aware that life was short and too precious to spend with someone who didn't notice your presence. Back at the house, the barbecue smell still lingered faintly in the air. Claire was inside, scrolling through her phone as though nothing had changed. I didn't feel anger or sadness. Instead, I felt clarity, the kind that comes when you finally stop trying to rescue something that's already lost. I sent Poppy a quick message. Best weekend ever. Thank you. Her reply came instantly. No, thank you for letting yourself feel alive again. And that's when it hit me. The honeymoon alone, she suggested, wasn't an insult. It was a gift, unintentionally, that nudged me into a life that was waiting just beyond the invisible walls of indifference. Sometimes people push you away not because they hate you, but because they no longer fit into your story. And sometimes, the universe, or a bright, small neighbor named Poppy, shows up to remind you what it feels like to be fully seen again. Claire never apologized. She didn't notice my absence until Monday morning, when the house felt slightly emptier than usual. And I didn't go back to ask for explanations or try to salvage what had been lost. I had discovered something far more important: the courage to choose myself, the willingness to embrace the unexpected, and the clarity that happiness isn't something you negotiate, it's something you claim. As I sat on the porch one evening, watching the sun dip behind the horizon, I thought about how strange life could be. One sentence at a backyard barbecue, casually tossed over a plate of burgers, had changed everything. And yet, the change felt like relief, like finally stepping into a story where I was no longer invisible, where laughter and curiosity replaced silence and indifference. Poppy waved from across the yard, her grin warm and mischievous. I waved back, heart lighter than it had been in years. The world felt vast, possibilities endless, and for the first time in a long time, I knew I would never settle for anything less than someone who truly saw me, or a life that made me feel alive. And just like that, a single afternoon, a small backyard barbecue, and a neighbor named Poppy had rewritten the ending I thought I was stuck with forever.